So,
Wow, wow, wow. Well, this is big news. It absolutely is. Okay, so you're headed through Abilene and you're on your way to Dallas. Is that right? Is that right?
correct. This weekend, and it's on my website. I'm going to be speaking at Correct. Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to be speaking at a Messianic congregation on the Sabbath.
While you're there,
and in a church in a place called North Point.
Okay. Well, while you're there, ask people about the humongous mosque compound, 402-acre compound in Plano with Yasser Qadi. Ask them about the big compound in Irving, the neighborhood, the Sharia neighborhood in Irving, Texas. So Dallas has got a real problem. See if your Jewish Messianic friends know that they're setting up one of the biggest terrorist groups, according to reports, recruiting terrorist groups in the area with another location as well. We'll get a report from you, and you'll be in studio with us April 1st and April 30th and May 1st. You'll be in our studio, as well as, of course, this Tuesday night in Milwaukee. Take care, guys.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Doge, though, is to use AI to look for it, right? Can you give us a sneak peek of how you'll find waste, fraud, and abuse that has escaped others?
I think that advanced computing and the use of data in de-siloing, there's a problem where you have sort of non-technical discussions about the use of AI to sort of fetishize, one tool. But I would say the broad use of technology improvements across the federal government are not only going to be important, I think is necessary in order to actually get the job done. Right now, for example, you think about the data silos. You got to compare whether or not you have excess spending or waste, fraud, abuse by comparing different databases. Often you can't do that because that information is siloed in different houses, in different parts of the federal bureaucracy that don't talk to each other, that don't even operate on the same kind of code, that don't operate even according to some of the same enterprise systems. So in some sense, I'm resisting the AI illusion, not because I don't think AI can be useful. Of course it can.
Not to fetishize it,
but because there's a lot lower hanging fruit.
Yeah, what's an example of another technological tool that you have your eye on?
I would say even using synchronous systems, right? Actually the same kinds of software that can talk to be compatible with other kinds of software that are being used in a part of the federal government that's working on a similar problem, but because it's in a different silo, isn't even using compatible software. You have COBOL on mainframes is basically the norm in a lot of the federal government today. And, I may be overstating the case on that, but not by a lot. And so I do think that a basic modernization of the software, of the technology, of the rails on which the federal government's information actually flows, that's low-hanging fruit that I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, it's going to strictly improve the effectiveness with which the taxpayer dollar is actually spent. And I do think that I'm not alone in feeling this way, and Elon's not alone in feeling this way. I think that's part of why we're seeing business leaders across the country, especially those who have dealt with the government, to step up and say, how can I actually help in this effort? And I hope that's why our success is going to be one that isn't a partisan victory, but it's something that goes beyond traditional politics, to say that we're actually making government function more efficiently and effectively. And as a result, it turns out that we have to spend a lot less money. We need a lot fewer bureaucrats doing it. We restore that sense of civic accountability and revival where people feel like the government is actually responsive to them, in part because they can vote out people when they're doing a bad job, but in part because they're getting a better result as a consequence of dealing with the government.
Artificial intelligence it's a useful tool, but it's got to be properly applied. Welcome to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Those of us in the programming and computing space have long known that artificial intelligence is going to arrive in the real world for decades now, and it finally has. And so far, we see its use as a tool to make faster, more efficient, better decisions using very large data sets, especially that humans and ordinary computers struggle to manipulate and use as decision tools, like Vivek was just describing there. While these uses can seem harmless, though, and what we want, faster and more reliable decision making, especially in government, there are some real dangers on the AI superhighway ahead of us. And we've got to identify them. We've got to plan for them. And more importantly, and I think this is probably the most important piece to the discussion where we're at right now in time and space around AI, is establish ethical frameworks to prevent harm to individual human beings, in our case, Americans, especially when you're talking about the government use. Well, my guest that's back with us today is Jeff Dornick. He's a man who stands on principle. He's not afraid to ask the hard questions, and he fights to get the truth to the American people. He's here to discuss government use of AI, and he recently wrote an op-ed for Newsweek voicing his concerns about it. Jeff's the CEO of Pickaxe, an author, a podcast host, and an independent media network creator. Jeff, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me back on. It's always a blast talking to you.
Yeah, I'm glad you sent me your op-ed because I've been wanting to have a good discussion with somebody that is deeply involved in programming, the way things are done today, but also has a background in ethics and logic, because this space, this AI space, I think a lot of people have a lot of different views of what AI is, but most people don't have a clue, and they don't know what it is not.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think that the way that I try to look as I always try to take a step back and look at everything from the big picture. Like, okay, so what's actually going on? What's the worldview of the guys that are actually pushing this and implementing this? What are the potential positives? What are the potential negatives? And I think just like with almost any kind of technology, there are so many positives that could come from artificial intelligence, from breakthroughs medically to overcoming all the bioweapons that are coming out of Wuhan, China, and like there's so many different potentials that we could use artificial intelligence to accomplish. But we also have to be very realistic about what are the pitfalls. And especially when you start looking, and again, I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible. I believe that God is the one true God. The whole deal. And so I look at everything from a Christian perspective too. And when I look at the worldview of a lot of these guys that are pushing and developing and promoting artificial intelligence, it's about as anti-God and atheistic as you can possibly get. And that's I think there's in my opinion, the end game cannot by definition be a positive one if you are eliminating a biblical worldview from the framework, or even just a Judaic-Christian ethic to all of this. Sam Altman, who's the guy who runs OpenAI, he came out and said that here in America, we're going to have to rethink and renegotiate our social contract, or in other words, our constitutional rights. What are our constitutional rights in light of artificial intelligence? Because AI is going to inundate everything. We're no longer going to have any sort of privacy rights. Artificial intelligence is going to be making a lot of these kinds of decisions, and it's very, very invasive. And so, even according to Sam Altman himself, we're going to have to begin to rethink the social contract that we have in our society, because we're no longer going to live under this constitutional republic that we've all grown to love our entire lives.
Let's talk about that in the context of that you chose for your op-ed, and that is DOGE, the DOGE operations, the Department of Government Efficiency operations that Elon Musk has got this team of high intellect individuals, high earning power individuals. I mean, the gentleman that was on the TV the other day talking about how they had found all these Social Security numbers that were being given away. I think he's a billionaire. So in that context, what does that mean? redefine the social contract because of artificial intelligence. Because look, man, we're still using COBOL in the federal government. That's what I learned. One of the things I learned to write when I was in my early 20s and late teens. And I'm 63. So in that context, why does he think that AI? It's just a computer program, man. It's not gonna. This is a programmer talking here. It's still garbage in, garbage out. It's not going to become sentient. It's a really, really good computer program married with really, really good large data models. So why does he think contracts got to be rewritten?
Yeah, well, so here's the problem is that I think a lot of us, we're used to things like Grok and ChatGPT, which are chatbots, right? So we interact with it. We understand how it works. Obviously, a lot of people will use it to, write music, or they'll do it to make a video, or they'll do it to write an article, or there's lots of different applications to that. But in general, what it is, it's a large language model that's combining all this data, all this information into one pot, and then it's pulling from that to be able to give us an extremely quick and pretty accurate answer when it comes to this. So from that perspective, Doge implementing artificial intelligence is the right move from the standpoint of how do you analyze this massive amounts of data? How do we pinpoint where the waste is, where the fraud is? And so I get using artificial intelligence as a tool. The concern that I have though is, okay, what's the next step? Because the next step of what Elon and Doge are looking at is how do we streamline the government? And one of the ways that's being floated out there that they can streamline the government is to eliminate a lot of the human jobs and replace it with artificial intelligence for a lot of the mundane, repetitive, tasks. But the problem with that becomes when you start taking AI and instead of just using it as data analyzing, and instead it's going to begin make decisions, that's when you start getting outside of the realm of, okay, now are we dealing with violating our constitutional rights? If it makes a decision based upon its own view or its programmer's view of the way things should apply, who gets held responsible if artificial intelligence makes a decision that violates your constitutional rights or invades your privacy or does something along those lines? That's a concern that I have, because you can't throw AI in jail. It's going to be very convoluted to try to challenge the coding in courts. You really think a judge is going to understand the background coding of a large language model, artificial intelligence structure, the whole, it will be almost impossible to truly challenge. So when you look at it from that perspective, as you said, the AI is only as good as its programmer. It's only, like garbage in, garbage out. Now, right now, you can make the argument. Elon Musk and Donald Trump will make a very neutral artificial intelligence that won't be biased and all that. What happens if Gavin Newsom wins in 2028? Then he's going to bring in his own programmers from out here in communist California where I live that I'm sure are all flaming lefties. What's going to happen then when they start using artificial intelligence to push things like Black Lives Matter and critical race theory and transgenderism and pro-LGBTQ and all these issues? It can be weaponized against us, and that's why I think we have to be very careful about applying this kind of a technology under a friendly presidency, because the same kind of technology that we could use for good can be used for catastrophic harm if the wrong person gets into office.
Yeah, and look, you shouldn't trust Elon Musk and Donald Trump with this either, quite honestly. I mean, Elon Musk talks about his neural network being fully integrated into the human body, and I've heard him speak about AI being integrated into that and creating a superhuman race. I don't know that I totally agree with that concept, quite honestly. And if he's working on that as part of the government, then as a taxpayer, I demand to see all of the layers of that work output and have a voice speaking for me in how that works ethically and logically and interacts with our society and human beings. And don't you think?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. And I think one of the other concerns that I've heard a lot of people talk about when it comes to Elon and his use of AI and the large language model that he's using with Doge right now is, obviously our government owns the data that's being funneled into this AI. But who owns the AI? I haven't seen any confirmation that he licensed it to the government and it's the government's property. This AI, is it his that he's licensing to use with permission? But while he's given all the data back, is the AI that learned all the data staying within his control? And that's a concern when he has so many government contracts with our enemies. He's doing business in China and other countries as well. And I don't think that Elon's going to go around and he's trying to be a sinister villain and take our information and give it somewhere else. But it's also a security risk when you have somebody with so many different ties, with so many different countries and organizations and corporations. Like, what are we doing with this data? How do we protect our data? Not just us individually, but us as a government and our government secrets and our IRS and our Treasury Department. And you just go through all that whole list. There's definitely a lot of security concerns that we have with that, and also the potential for, if this falls into the wrong hands, that it becomes weaponized against us in any number of ways.
Oh, absolutely. You know, one of the questions I have is the AI being used with the Doge? Is that a Elon Musk Grok platform type AI that he's disconnected from the public and allowing the government to use it? I mean, you talked about licensing and those kind of things, but that software, I think, is open architecture and open source, and he's made that public. So the risk of adversaries getting into it is already there. I mean, they're inside. You know they are. The moment he opened up his platform and all of that software, they're in.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting is I was talking with a cybersecurity expert over the last week or so, and I forget if it was public or private, because I've been on shows and in events and all that kind of stuff. So I won't say who it was, but we were talking about Doge specifically, and one of the concerns that they have from a cybersecurity standpoint was that according to reports and a lot of information that's out there, is that there's a lot of security concerns in regards to how Doge's team was connecting to the government servers. And so they were taking a lot of their personal devices, whether their computers or whatever it is, and plugging into the servers and violating a lot of the procedures that they were supposed to follow from that standpoint, which opens us up to a lot of hacking. They don't have to hack the computer server, the government server. Now they can hack this, one person who's working at Doge's computer or a server or access or something along those lines. And so the concern that this cybersecurity person was actually telling me was that in light of a lot of these swattings that's been happening, and all our friends have been swatted over the last several weeks actually, that they're actually concerned because that was probably coming from some sort of government list. Because to be able to take all these social media accounts, some of them under pseudonyms, some of them under public names, and then you're able to access that back to the person's name, the person's address, and also their extended family members, because a lot of their family members are now being targeted as well. Like, that's not something that you easily come by, that sort of a list, and for it to all to be happening within that certain period of time. So there's a lot of concern that may have actually come from security protocols not being followed when it comes to Doge accessing all of our information, whether it's census records or Treasury Department or IRS or any number of different agencies. And so there are definitely some security concerns just from a data standpoint about what Doge is doing from that standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. And we got to take a break here, but I'll just tell you that I've been threatened by one of the main suspects, that the people that we know who have already been swatted. And I've spent a lot of time on the phone with law enforcement yesterday, giving them my address and phone number and location. And it's because, I did a show with Beard Vet about the swatting issue. And the very next day, I got a credible threat that the FBI said, yep, that's our leading suspect. So it's out there, and we've got to take a really hard look at it. We'll be right back with Jeff Dornick. We're talking about artificial intelligence. It's used especially in the government and the dangers thereof, and what needs to happen in order to mitigate that risk. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because he, from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Well, we're really excited, and I just want to say, the American people are very excited about President Trump, Elon Musk trying to get the federal spending under control. So I just want to say that off the bat. States like Oklahoma, we want to support that. We're using AI technology to look at all government spending across all the forms of our different departments, and we're finding a lot of inefficiencies. We're canceling contracts. We're using AI to set up better data centers, better call centers across our state, and we think it's going to save that one piece alone by replacing the call centers about $30 million of Oklahoma taxpayer money. We've canceled a lot of PR contracts. We've seen some waste and some different inefficiencies all across the state government. I've gotten rid of about 1,000 vehicles that literally, they weren't being driven. So just common sense stuff. We're not changing services to the citizens of Oklahoma. We're just being more efficient with taxpayer dollars. And I think as the businessman governor, that's what Oklahomans ask me to do, to put a fresh set of eyes on all this government spending. And government's too big. It's too out of control, especially at the federal level. But the states need to come together and give Elon some information on how we can reduce the federal spending that comes to the states. So that's the other thing Oklahoma's going to do is give Elon a report and President Trump to say, hey, here's 20, here's 30% of the federal dollars that flow into the state. And if we extrapolate that over all 50 states, that's another $1 trillion worth of savings.
Back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking about artificial intelligence and its use in government in the context of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, being used by Elon Musk. And my guest is Jeff Dornick, the CEO of Pickaxe, who wrote an op-ed piece about this for Newsweek. And Jeff, I wanted to show that clip. It's the governor of Oklahoma, and all the government guys, they love this AI thing, man. And everything he said there, he's using it as a tool to look at large data sets, to find issues with them, essentially, like the 1,000 vehicles that weren't being driven. That's obviously in a data set that they use the AI tool to look at it and do an analysis of it. I'm okay with all of that as long as somebody's watching it, somebody being a human being, not my computer or my phone or whatever. I think I'm okay with that, but you had a little anecdote in your article that I wanted to ask you about the potential to use AI to manage government building contracts and government building issues, which is billions and billions of dollars. I think we've seen a lot of dollar figures out of the GSA, Government Services Administration, that manages the real estate, the infrastructure, those kind of things. But the AI would actually be like a chat bot making decisions about this kind of stuff. That gets me to thinking, making decisions, is it going to be turned on and let loose? Will there be controls over it? Will somebody monitor this? What are we talking about there, really?
Yeah, well, see, and that's the problem. That's like what I was saying before. It's like when you go from just analyzing data, I'm all for that from that standpoint. But when you start going to allowing a chatbot or an AI to actually make decisions that impact American citizens, now, again, I go back to this idea of what recourse do we have? Because, we've all seen how the government has been weaponized against conservative groups and Christian groups and all of that. And again, I'm not making any kind of allegation or accusation against anybody in the Trump administration that would weaponize it. But the potential is still there to use this kind of technology to weaponize it. And again, what kind of recourse would you have if you take the human element out of the decision making? Because it's like, okay, let's say that you have, like my good friend is Pastor Kim Peters, who runs the Church of Planned Parenthood, right? And they've got this nonprofit organization. They go around and they hold church services outside of Planned Parenthoods. They protest. They're very controversial, right? So now all of a sudden, let's say that they want to, do something or work in conjunction with the government or get a permit or whatever it is. and we turn that over to streamline it as an AI chatbot, and the chatbot's like, yeah, well, you know what, you've been getting in trouble a little bit because the police have been, asking you guys to leave or doing X, Y, and Z. You guys have been causing a little bit of trouble here. We're not going to get this approved. Now that's a violation of their constitutional rights, but also on the flip side, who do you hold responsible for violating those rights? Like, that's the problem that we run into when it comes to using these sort of chatbots. But I kind of want to throw it back really quick to what the that video clip that you were sharing, because I think that there's a lot of Republicans that are jumping on this Doge bandwagon. And again, I'm all for exposing the fraud and the waste and the wasteful spending and all of this. But this is all things that Congress should have been dealing with. This is all things that your state legislators should have been dealing with for years, if not decades, and they haven't. And all of a sudden, Elon comes along. It's like, oh my gosh, look at what Elon Musk is doing. He's saving us all money. Well, how did we get here? So to a certain degree, what Doge is doing is actually treating the symptoms and not the root problems. It's not dealing with the process of how we got to this point with all this wasteful spending, all this fraud. I'm working on a project right now on working on government contracts and all that kind of stuff, a little bit of like advising and things like that. And it's really eye-opening when you start to dive into the process and how many steps there are and how many different ways it is to easily get money out of the government. And if all we do is just expose the fraud and the waste, but we don't deal with those step-by-step problems and corruption, it's like we're just going to be in this mess again in 5 years when Elon Musk is no longer the head of Doge.
Oh, yeah. You haven't even gotten into the political part of it. We have a great auditor here in Mississippi. His name's Shad White. He's an Air Force JAG in the reserves, I think. I met him about a year ago. And great individual, really conscientious about his job, finds all kinds of money. He calls his guys the Mississippi Doge machine, but the state Senate, which is also run by Republicans, tried to zero out his budget and pass a law limiting or almost eliminating his ability to go out and find fraud, waste, and abuse, because they don't like the fact that he's finding all this loose money running around. Just as much as a lot of the establishment Republicans don't like the fact that Elon Musk is doing it up at the federal level.
Yeah, well, it's a great point, and the thing is that I got a lot of flack for this. But, in the whole thing with the continuing resolution, I ended up supporting, Thomas Massie and his decision not to support the continuing resolution, because both he and Rand Paul, they made a very, in my opinion, a very important point. We have Elon Musk running around with Doge, exposing all this waste, all this fraud, and saying, like, and on the Doge website, it shows how much money we're saving the taxpayers. But if Congress just reauthorizes the same funds to go towards all these programs, what is the point of Doge? We're not actually saving anybody any money. And so with that continuing resolution, even Senator Rand Paul, he introduced an amendment in order to say, okay, cool, we'll do a continuing resolution as long as we cut all the spending that Doge has exposed. And that got shut down. And so I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, so we're doing all this work, but then Congress isn't doing its job in cutting the spending because they control the purse strings. So this is what's frustrating is it's like Doge and Elon, they're exposing all this kind of stuff, but then our elected officials aren't actually doing their job, and they haven't been doing their job. At what point are our elected officials actually going to do their job and cut spending and get rid of all this waste?
You're exactly right. And that's the problem. That's the problem. We got some hands up over in the audience, Jeff. Let's take a question from over there. Rob's our host. Go ahead, Rob.
We have Joseph, Colonel.
Thank you very much, Colonel. And thank you very much, Jeff. All right. Number one, I have two questions, but one's really simple. Just for the sake of transparency. Are you or have you ever been employed by an NGO or a non-governmental organization of any kind? And then the second one is this idea of Doge and what it's doing and everything and separating it out. I agree with you, but my question is this. What would be your proposal to do? Because if they hadn't done what they had done the way they did it, we'd be nowhere and we'd have no information because the Congress, as we see, is not interested in fixing the problem and may very well never be interested in fixing the problem unless we force them to do so.
Yeah. So I've never worked for an NGO or anything along those lines. Never, anything like that. So I don't have any personal experience with that side of things from a personal standpoint. when it comes specifically to Elon, I'm not saying that Elon and Doge shouldn't be doing all of this. I'm just saying that we shouldn't be in the position in order for Elon and Doge to be having to do all of this, because this is supposed to be the responsibility of the United States House of Representatives to actually get in there, and they're the ones that are in charge of the purse strings. They're the ones that are in charge of actually establishing a lot of these procedures that are rife with fraud and abuse, because they're the ones that are, a lot of times they're getting the kickback through their own, organizations and nonprofits and all that kind of stuff. They're getting contracts with the government. So we shouldn't even have to be in this position. And I think that for me is what's frustrating, is that we're having all these elected officials saying, yes, go Elon Musk, go Doge, let's do all of this. But it's like, but we're only in this position because you guys did jack squat to cut all this spending in the first place. You guys approved and authorized it with every single continuing resolution, with every single proposed spending bill that you guys authorized. You guys allowed this waste and abuse to happen, but now all of a sudden we're going to position ourselves as if, oh yeah, we want to eliminate all this fraud and abuse. It's like, well, you guys are the ones that authorized it in the first place. We shouldn't even be in this position, is more of my point. That's not a rag on Elon, because, we hire Elon to do a job, and he's doing the job that Congress isn't and should have been doing this entire time. So to me, that's just the point. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, great answers, Jeff. We got to take another break, but I'll just say I wrote an op-ed about Elon just a couple weeks ago. I've been on TV talking about it too, and the fact that we've got to protect him from the Chinese communists, because he's a contractor, he's a defense contractor, and he's got access to all this data, and his defense part of his companies have to be protected. But that doesn't mean I don't like what Elon's doing. I love what he's doing with Doge. Because it's bringing a huge spotlight on these politicians, as Jeff has rightly pointed out, that have not and continue to not do their job of getting rid of this fraud, waste, and abuse. And believe me, brothers and sisters, they know it's there. They knew it was there before Elon started showing up. We'll be right back with Jeff Dornick on The Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
If you create an all-digital financial system, you create a control system. It's the end of currency. It's not a new form of currency. It's the end of currency. And you can combine controlling people's financial transactions using AI and software with social credit systems that basically say, if you don't do what we say, then you can't leave your house. So imagine during COVID, during the pandemic, if the leadership had total financial transaction control, they could have literally micromanaged your compliance with lockdown procedures, or if they want to mandate certain health practices. If you don't do this health thing, then they're going to cut off your money. So it's a total control system.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and my guest is CEO of Pickaxe, Jeff Dornick, and we're talking about his op-ed piece. It's the context of Doge and using AI in the process in government decision-making and data analysis and those kind of things. And Jeff, I couldn't help myself when I came across that little clip that we just showed there she almost wrapped the whole set of dangers into one short 1-minute statement about why artificial intelligence is extremely dangerous. And we've got to set up an ethical architecture and structure to prevent what she's talking about from ever happening to a human being.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, I don't even know what that would necessarily look like, and that's the hard part about dealing with, like, working through the ethics and the morals, and how do we protect our constitutional rights with artificial intelligence? Because in my opinion, AI is actually violating so many of our rights and violating so many different ethical practices, even just right now, let alone all the potentials that are going to happen down the road. I mean, just what was it, a couple of years ago, the Hollywood screenwriters had their big strike against the Hollywood studios, and a big part of it that wasn't talked about all that much was how the studios were using artificial intelligence to write the first draft of scripts for movies, which is the biggest income driver for screenwriters. And so what the studios were doing to save money is they would cut out the screenwriter for the first draft. They'd use AI. They'd say, like, they'd put in a prompt of, again, more elaborate than this, but basically, like, look, we want a movie for Tom Cruise that's a hybrid between Top Gun and Iron Man, and make it funny and sarcastic and whatever it is. And it would pump out a script, and then it would then pass it on to the screenwriter to rewrite it, which is, they would do at a discounted rate. So that's actually, but what they're doing is they're actually taking all the rest of the scripts that would fit into there, use in the large language model, and basically plagiarize all the previous scripts to come out with the new script. Same thing is happening right now with Google. Google is actually running a lot of bloggers and content creators out of business right now, because everybody used to rely on SEO in order to drive traffic to their website, in order to get a lot of hits to their website, where then they would run ads and all of that as they were writing articles and the whole deal. Well, now what Google is doing is they're using AI to look through all the search results when you ask a question, and then it'll give you the answer before giving you all the search results. So now you no longer have a need to actually click on any of the links to go to any website, because they're just giving you the answer right away. Well, guess what? Now you're running all these people out of business while you're actually using their information to basically keep people from actually going and giving proper credit and proper, revenue stream to the actual person who figured out the answer to that. This is, to me, a wildly unethical, technology that they're implementing on a mass scale. And that's even just like the bare minimum basic things. We're not even getting into the potentials of something like Neuralink, or when you're actually combining human biology with technology, when you're actually getting into the government use of it, and all these different ethical things, and the propaganda behind algorithms. Like, there's so many different areas that I don't know how we protect our constitutional rights in a scenario where basically they're creating a technology that can be all-knowing all the time. It's wild when you actually think about this.
Yeah, and I think that's why, and I haven't seen this work started yet, but we have to set up an ethics architecture that provide guardrails and help human beings work their way through how to use these tools properly without endangering themselves and others. I mean, I would think that there would be all sorts of high intellectual, high earning power human beings that want to get on that train track so that this tool, this artificial intelligence, can be exploited to its maximum potential while protecting the human race, because that's really where we need to go. Well, we got a hand up over in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that question. Rob, go ahead.
We have CP, Colonel.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Colonel. Jeff, my question is, couldn't we put the Constitution and all Supreme Court decisions into all AI used by government agencies and make it irrevocable and unviolatable in order to keep our constitutional rights protected?
You mean with using like AI from that standpoint, and like a large language model taking all the data from all the Supreme Court cases in the Constitution?
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah, put a hard rule into the AI by uploading that data, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all the Supreme Court decisions, and forcing the AI to use that as like a filter when it's making an assessment on whether something's constitutional or not. That's the way I took that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that again is who's doing the code, and in which cases and which decisions are you going to highlight? And so that's part of the problem is this is just on a completely separate note, but like I feel like the justice system has become completely warped because we're relying on these justices to actually kind of rewrite the United States Constitution. So then it's like, okay, so which version are we going to apply to what case, and are we going to trust AI? Because they're going to have to have programmers that are going to have to program the AI to make certain kinds of decisions. Like it's not like you could just set up an AI and then just let it go rogue, because there's going to be some certain parameters that you're going to put around it, some kind of guidelines, some kind of different things from that standpoint. So there's still going to be bias that's going to be put in it. Are we going to be an originalist artificial intelligence, or are we going to be one that's a revisionist artificial intelligence? Which kind of Supreme Court justice are you going to be supporting? That's kind of the problem that I think when it comes to using AI to interpret the law and interpret the Constitution is, are we having a conservative that's an originalist doing it, or are you going to have a lefty that's a revisionist interpretation of the United States Constitution that will be applying this through AI? And again, how do you challenge AI if AI makes the wrong decision?
Yeah, it makes me ponder the question as to whether the justices' staffs and their clerks are using some form of AI right now as they get court cases in. It's just a big piece of text, that's got to be analyzed and those kind of things. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. As a matter of fact, I would probably be experimenting with it if I'm not using it already. But I'm intrigued, though, by the idea of having the Constitution itself with the amendments as a filter and a check on output and decisions that come from any type of U.S. government and even state government artificial intelligence decision-making tools. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would be all for it from a media standpoint. I would be totally against it from a governmental standpoint. I think, again, if the government just wants to use it for data and information and to run it through the different scenarios, hey, explain to me how this could be, and then the justice would then take the information and then apply it themselves based upon their own understandings and all that. Sure, use whatever tools you can there, but if we're going to prop it up to the point to where it begins to start making certain decisions, like I could see a scenario, and I've heard some rumblings of this as well. Why don't we use AI for the lower, court cases, for the first round of court cases to come in, because we have such a big backlog in the justice system right now. Why don't we use AI to make the first decisions, and then if they want to appeal, then they can appeal up to the next court and that sort of thing. And I just feel like, okay, so we're going to do that. Then when we get backlogged in the next court, then we're going to apply to the next court. It's just going to keep getting more and more and more. I don't like the idea of AI making decisions. Use it as a tool, use it as a resource, but as soon as it starts making decisions, that's when, in my opinion, you start to violate people's rights.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you used an example in your article about the hated 5 bullet points, what I did this week that has to be submitted to Elon and Doge by every government employee, and how there's a discussion going on about can we use AI to analyze all of these answers to these questions and decide whether a specific position is mission critical or not, or even necessary. What's wrong with that decision? I mean, it seems pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, and this is where they're going with this, is that can some of these tasks be replaced with AI to streamline these things, right? It's, you would think, okay, approve or deny, some sort of request, right? Just have AI figure it out based upon all the data that comes in. The problem with that, again, is that's step one. Then they're going to say, oh, well, this works for this. We can apply it to this, this, and this, and this, and this. And it's a slippery slope. And I hate using the slippery slope argument, but I don't see an end to this because of the trajectory that we're heading in right now. You could use it for very mundane, innocent tasks kind of a thing. But again, as soon as you take the human element out of it, all of a sudden now you no longer have the checks and balances that our founding fathers established for this country. I mean, when you think about it to a certain degree, if you're asked to do something that's unconstitutional, or you're asked to do something that you feel like is a violation of the law and you're working for the government, you could become a whistleblower. You could say, no, I'm not going to do this. But if all of a sudden you have an AI and then the programmer or the boss writes into the AI, we need more of this. We need to push more DEI. We need to make these kinds of hiring decisions or whatever it is. And you're leaving it up to the AI. It's going to be almost impossible to challenge. And you're taking away the checks and balances that our founding fathers intended for this country by having that human-to-human element, and it's also taking away our ability to be self-governed, which again is what our founding fathers wanted.
Do you think that there's some element to human nature and the human mind that is impossible to capture? I know I believe that. I'm pretty sure you do too. But I wanted to ask this question and give you a chance to talk about it for a second before we go to the last break. And that is that the nuance of human decision making and all that goes into it is much more than the ones and zeros, that no matter how complex the computer programming code that I can write is, can never pick up on.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, there's lived experience, that's a huge thing. There's your emotions, but then there's also the spiritual component and your worldview. And this is where I've been really wrestling with this a lot, and I've been even kind of taking myself out of a lot of the political fights and debates and focusing more like, what's our worldview? What do we actually believe about stuff? And that's such an important thing. And there's so many different nuances. I mean, you could say, look, I have a Christian worldview. Okay, but which version of Christianity is your worldview? Are you Presbyterian? Are you Protestant? Are you Catholic? Are you evangelical? Are you cessationist? Are you charismatic? Like, which version of that? Because that will then impact what you believe about the world, what you believe about life, what you believe about our rights. There's so many different nuances to this and so many different perspectives, and to try to encapsulate it all into like one like algorithm or one technology that's very centralized, to me, that's taking away the very essence of what we're supposed to have in this country. Like our country is founded on this idea that each and every one of us individually are created in the image of God. And because we're created in the image of God, we have certain inalienable rights that are given to us by God himself that cannot be taken away by the government. And so, it's a very individualistic set of rights, whereas the left and socialists and communists and, England before America declared independence, it was much more groupthink. It was like, what's good for the greater good. And our founding fathers, they did not look at what's best for the greater good. They looked at what's best for the individual, your individual rights. And I think that to a certain degree is when you're looking at AI, what AI is doing, it's taking all of our information. So if you're talking about having one centralized AI that's helping to run this federal government or running a state government, it's going to be aggregating all the information and all the different perspectives of all the different people into one, and then outputting basically, based upon all that information. But it's taking away the individual sovereignty and the individual liberty that we have and our individual personalities and perspectives, and just aggregating it all into be one centralized decision-making force. And that, to me, again, it's violating the very spirit of what our country was founded on individual rights, individual liberty, and individual sovereignty, and being created in the image of God. And the government can't take away our rights. They can't take away our voice. They can't take away our free speech, our free expression, all of our freedoms. But I feel like with AI, it actually has the potential to take away every single right that we actually have. And that's the trajectory that we're heading in. I don't see a way, if we keep going down this path, where that's not going to happen.
And you just explained why what I've been saying is true. It will never be sentient. It's still a computer program. We got to take our last break. When we come back, we got one more question from the audience, but I want to dive even deeper into that discussion, Jeff, and because the discussion is about, are we human beings, or are we going to be some combination of machine and human being, or are we just going to give our decision making and our entire lives over to the machinery and forget all about individual rights? I think that's the timeline or the graph line of what we've got to look at when we're making decisions about artificial intelligence. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
the true danger is not that AI will turn against us in some sort of, Terminator apocalyptic war. But instead, the real danger is that we will turn to it willingly, trustingly, and only realize too late that we have just given up control. Not just control, free will, and our very purpose for being alive. That's another question you should ask. Why are you here? Why were you born? What is your purpose? And I guarantee you, you have one. There is a reason. There's a reason everything in your life is happening right now. You have to discover that.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking about artificial intelligence and its use in government, but it goes beyond government. My guest today is Jeff Dornick, the CEO of a new social media platform called Pickaxe, an author and independent media and content creator and network operator when it comes to independent media. And Jeff, I think Glenn, I wanted to show that clip from Glenn in this last segment because, I mean, it is bigger than just even decision making, the potential dangers of this. And again, I asked the question, what are the guardrails we need to establish today and then build upon them to protect human beings as artificial intelligence becomes more and more powerful and begins to touch more and more aspects of our human being lives without losing our humanness?
Yeah, honestly, I keep coming back to the fact that I don't think that there are guardrails that will stop this thing. I think it's that far out of control, and here's why. If you listen to both Elon Musk and Bill Gates over the last couple of weeks, they've been talking about what we can expect over the next 5 to 10 years, of development of artificial intelligence, and they both basically said within the next decade, we're no longer going to need humans in the workforce because robots and AI will be able to do everything. Elon is saying within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have billions of his cyborgs walking around this planet doing tasks for us. In his promo video when he what was it, Optimus or whatever it is that he's calling these robots, he's saying like, look, they're going to be able to teach your kids. They're going to be able to babysit your kids. How terrifying is that? Are you really going to trust a flipping robot to babysit your little 3-year-old? Are you kidding me? That's absolutely insane. But that's their worldview. And so when you listen to Bill Gates and you listen to Elon Musk, who are both saying the same thing, the end game of this is basically to make human beings irrelevant. You could make the argument, the government could say, look, we're not going to allow that to happen. Okay, but on a step-by-step basis, can we actually stop them from accomplishing this? Because, we've all seen technology has eliminated human jobs for the longest time. Elon is working on self-driving cars. It's going to eliminate Lyft drivers, right? He's developing self-driving semi-trucks that will be transporting goods across the country. That will eliminate truckers and their jobs. Okay, so you're like, okay, well, we can't stop technology from progressing because we've never done that before. There's always been technology that's replaced human beings and human jobs, right? But what happens when it comes for every single job known to mankind? Now, all of a sudden, you listen to Elon Musk where he explains, well, this is the end game. The end game is we no longer have to work. Universal basic income, and we all can just have access to whatever we want. We can do whatever we want, and we have zero responsibilities. We have access to super intelligence and all the information that we would ever need because our brains are connected to the internet through things like Neuralink. And I'm just sitting here and I'm listening to the worldview of these guys that are developing the technology, and they are literally eliminating the very definition of what it means to be a human being. And I don't see any step-by-step process that our government would ever take to actually shut this down until it's way too late, because it's like you can't stop progress. You can't stop technology from taking away a job because technology is always taking away a job. So I kind of almost feel like the cat's out of the bag. This is where we're headed, and this is where we need to start thinking about, so what do we do to continue to hold on to our humanity and our value? We may have to set up our own ecosystems. We may have to set up our own communities that are human-driven as opposed to technology-driven. That's what I'm trying to do with Pickaxe as well, is having a platform where we're using technology, but having it very human-centered, as opposed to all the rest of the platforms. They're looking to take our information and our data and what makes us human, and then funnel that into their technology and artificial intelligence, which only centralizes the power even more. And we need to start thinking like that now. How do we keep our humanity in a world where these multi-billionaire oligarchs are going to centralize and have all the power over every single one of us, eliminate all of our jobs, and eliminate every single definition of what it means to be a human being? How do we live in a society like that? Because I don't see the government stepping in and stopping this at all whatsoever.
Yeah, the government's not going to step in at all on this. I mean, it's up to us, just like everything else in this country. Benjamin Franklin was famous for starting societal organizations to deal with problems. That's where the post office, for the fire department, all those concepts came from. Was not out of government. It was out of people coming together and addressing issues. And this is one of them. That's the approach we've got to use, because the government's not any good at this. Every time they've tried it, they've failed. Well, we got one more question in the audience. Let's go ahead and take it. Go ahead, Rob.
Colonel, we have Webb.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Colonel. And thank you, Jeff. I think the only feasible guardrail that I can even come up with is the repulsiveness of something like what you're talking about. The future that you're talking about represents to folks like myself and the rest of the people in the audience here to push back. And my worry is that they come up with a better reasoning AI that is specific to the executive method for decision making, so that they can then make.
I think we lost Wib. Go ahead, Wib.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah, I think we lost him before the question got out even. Isn't technology wonderful?
He's in the Matrix, Colonel.
Technology's wonderful. This is a prime example, Jeff, that you cannot rely solely on technology. We can't be in a system that's developed that where the human being becomes irrelevant. That's where I think the line has to be drawn. You touched on it a couple of seconds ago. We cannot allow ourselves to become irrelevant. I mean, you look at all the science fiction writings that are out there, and science fiction tends to, by and large, become fact eventually in reality. Eventually is what we've seen in our experience here on the human planet of Earth and everything. But you never see a serious discussion among science fiction authors where the human being part of it, or whatever being, sentient being, becomes totally irrelevant. Even in some science fiction shows where a character is like a parasite that overtakes another body or an android body, that parasite's still the entity, the being piece, the thinking part, the nuanced experiences, life experience, and that kind of thing. That part or piece of the actor's never written out of the play when it comes to science fiction for human beings, is it? I don't think we can allow that to happen.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I think it's like you look at any sci-fi movie or any movie in general. It's like what they're talking about 20 years ago is what's coming into place today. Whatever you're seeing in the movies today will probably come into reality in about 10 to 20 years, is the rule of thumb in general. And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, you start going back 20 years. Okay, there was a movie called Eagle Eye that came out almost exactly 20 years ago, which was about AI being used by the government as a centralized decision-making force that basically felt that the president was making the wrong decision in whether or not it should go to war, and it went rogue and just tried to control the government through a variety of ways that I'm not going to say publicly because they'll probably flag me from some sort of a terrorist threat or something like that. But when you look at that, it's like they're telling us. Yeah. This is a potential scenario that you could see come to play if this technology comes to fruition. And so I think that we have to be very careful. We have to think through not just the positives, but we have to think through the potential ramifications. What does this mean for humanity? And yes, there's a lot of positive things that can come from AI, but there's also a lot of horrific things that can come from artificial intelligence. And it's one of those things that I don't see how we can have the positives without the negatives. And I think that's the problem when really looking at this.
Yeah, we need to come together with all of our intellectuals in our society and scientists and community members and develop a prime directive like they used in Star Trek. You remember the prime directive, the ultimate rule of engagement. That level of thinking needs to go into an ethics structure around this technology because it's not going to end here. Yep, it's going to continue because humanity will continue to progress. Will continue to get smarter and smarter and move forward as we progress. So it won't end here. And if we don't do something now and get started on it, it will get totally and completely out of control. Well, tell folks where they can go find Pickaxe and sign up. I've been pushing it. I love the new capability to have my show posted automatically on my timeline when it goes up on Rumble. I appreciate that, and let's keep going.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You guys, you just go to Pickaxe, PICKAX.com. You guys can sign up, follow Rob on there. They've got a whole bunch of amazing shows. I think we have about 15 or 20 shows that are now streaming onto Pickaxe through our Rumble integration. And I've actually got some meetings with Rumble next week. We're going to figure out some more integrations that we can incorporate into Pickaxe. So go sign up today, pickaxe.com. And join in this, where we can actually experience freedom of speech and freedom of reach. And we're not, hey, guess what? We're not using AI in the way that everybody else is doing. So make sure you guys can go hop over there.
Well, thanks, my friend. I appreciate you coming and spending time with us. Monday, More War Monday, we'll have L. Todd Wood, the CEO of CDM Media, to talk about the status of the Ukraine war and some other things that have hit the news about that area in the last couple of weeks. And I'll see you then on Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview book.